Rain hit the windshield of the black Maybach in slow, deliberate beats, like a clock counting down something no one in the car wanted to name. Inside, Yoon Hye-rin pressed her palm flat against the curve of her belly, where 3 small heartbeats kept their own rhythm under her ribs. The driver had not spoken in 20 minutes. The bodyguard in the front seat would not meet her eyes in the mirror. On the leather beside her sat a folded silk handkerchief, white, embroidered with a single plum blossom in red thread, the kind her husband once tucked into her coat pocket on cold mornings when he still pretended to love her quietly. Tonight, that same handkerchief was wrapped around a hospital discharge envelope addressed not to her, but to a woman named Cha Mi-sol, and to a 4-year-old boy named Do-yoon, who shared her husband's last name without sharing her bed. The car stopped in front of the Seo family estate in Pyeongchang-dong, where the gates had iron lilies welded into the bars, and the gravel was always raked in straight lines, even in rain. Seo Jin-woo stood under the portico, smoking, the ember of his cigarette the only warm color in the night. He did not come down the steps. He waited, the way men wait who are used to being walked toward. Hye-rin walked toward him. She held the handkerchief out, plum blossom up. He looked at it, then at her stomach, then somewhere past her shoulder, as if a more important thought were arriving by mail. "You went to the hospital tonight," she said. Her voice did not shake. She had practiced not shaking for 9 months. "You signed papers for her, not me." "Hye-rin, you named the boy already?" "Do-yoon, you picked the Hanja yourself. The nurse showed me the form because she thought I was the mother." "Hye-rin, 3. She lifted her hand from her stomach so he could see how it trembled, because she wanted him to remember that detail later, when remembering would cost him. "There are 3 in here, Jin-woo. The doctor told you on Tuesday. You were in the car when he called. You said, 'Not now.'" Smoke left his mouth in a thin gray ribbon. He flicked the cigarette into the wet gravel, where it hissed and went black. "Mi-sol almost died tonight," he said, as if that were an answer. "The boy needs his father in the room when he wakes up. He's 4. He has a name. They have a name." He finally looked at her, and what she saw in his face was not cruelty. It was something worse. It was a decision already made, weeks ago, in some room she had never been allowed inside. "You have the SEO name. You have the house. You have the doctors. You'll be fine. They won't be." She did not cry. Later, she would be proud of that, in the small, mean way survivors are proud of things no one congratulates them for. She set the handkerchief on the wet step between them, plum blossom facing up, like a flag she was finally allowed to lower. "Then I release you," she said, "from the room, from the name, from the children you didn't ask about. Don't be dramatic." "I'm not." She turned her back on him, and the rain caught the side of her face. "I'm being precise." She walked back to the Maybach. The driver, an older man named Mr. Bayek, who had served the SEO family for 22 years, opened the door for her, and, for the first time in those 22 years, did not bow. He simply looked at her, and his eyes were wet in a way the rain could not explain. "Where to, madam?" he asked. "Anywhere," she said. "That does not belong to him." That night, on a cracked vinyl seat in an all-night clinic in Mapo, with fluorescent light buzzing overhead, and a vending machine humming sweet barley tea 3 steps away, Yoon Hye-rin signed the divorce papers her own father's lawyer had drafted in secret 6 weeks earlier, the day he understood what kind of family his daughter had married into. She signed with a borrowed pen. The ink smudged on the 3rd sheet because her thumb was still shaking. She did not fix it. Let the smudge be the record. Let the smudge be the truth. She kept the plum blossom handkerchief. She did not know yet why. 3 years passed the way years pass when a woman has decided to be unreachable. She moved to a coastal town 2 hours south of Sokcho, where the harbor smelled of diesel and dried squid, and she rented the upper floor of an old bookstore from a woman named Halmione Pio, who asked no questions and served her seaweed soup on the first day of every month without explanation. The triplets were born in a small hospital where the nurses called her teacher instead of madam, because she had told them she taught Korean literature, which had once been true. 2 girls and a boy. She named them after weather she liked. Ha-un, summer kindness. See Yule, poem rhythm. The boy she named Tayo, Great Dawn, because he came last and looked at the ceiling like he had been expecting it. They did not speak. Not at 1, not at 2, not at 3. The pediatrician in Soksho ran every test that could be run on 3 small bodies and found nothing wrong with their tongues, their ears, their brains. They laughed. They cried. They hummed in the bath. They tapped rhythms on the bookstore floor with wooden spoons. They simply did not use words. Selective mutism, the specialist said gently, in a beige office with a fish tank. Sometimes children who share a womb develop their own private language. Sometimes they refuse the outside one, because the outside one frightened the mother before they were born. Hayrin nodded. She did not tell the specialist about a man under a portico, or a handkerchief on a wet step, or 3 heartbeats trying to be heard over rain. She taught them to read instead. Picture books. Then chapter books. Then poems. They wrote answers on a small chalkboard, Halmione P.O., kept by the cash register, taking turns with a single piece of yellow chalk, their handwriting growing neater every season. The bookstore regulars learned to wait. The fishermen who came in for old detective novels began bringing the children candied chestnuts and asking yes or no questions they could nod to. The town folded itself around the silent triplets, the way coastal towns fold around anything strange and small in theirs. In Seoul, in a glass tower in Yeouido, Seo Jin-woo was learning the long, quiet arithmetic of a life built on the wrong choice. The SEO group had grown, shipping, construction, a chain of laundered restaurants no one in the family was supposed to mention at dinner, and Shami Sol had grown into the role of unofficial wife with the cold competence of a woman who knew she had been chosen during an emergency and was determined never to let the emergency end. Do-yoon was 7 now, a serious boy with his father's jaw and his mother's wariness, who flinched at raised voices and slept with the hallway light on. Jin-woo loved him. That was the trap of it. He loved him exactly as much as a man can love the proof of his own worst night. The plum blossom handkerchief had reappeared in Jinwoo's life in the way ghosts do, quietly, on a Tuesday. A junior accountant doing routine reconciliation on an old SEO family safe deposit box found a sealed envelope addressed in Hyren's handwriting, dated the night she left. Inside was the handkerchief, folded around a single ultrasound photograph. 3 small commas curled inside one shadow. 3 labels in a doctor's pen, A, B, C, and on the back, in Hyren's narrow script, "They heard you say not now." Jinwoo read it standing up. Then he read it sitting down. Then he did not read anything for a long time. He hired the kind of investigator who does not write things down. The investigator took 4 months because Hayrin had done what frightened women with money do well. She had become administratively boring. New name on the lease. Cash for groceries, children registered under her maiden surname at a coastal kindergarten. The investigator's report, when it finally came, was 3 pages long, and the photograph clipped to the front showed 3 children sitting on the steps of an old bookstore, eating shaved ice, the boy in the middle holding a chalkboard that read, "In careful child's Hangul, the sea is loud today." Jinwoo stared at the chalkboard for a long time. Then he asked the question he had been avoiding for 3 years. Why is he writing instead of speaking? The investigator, a thin woman named Director Ma who had seen worse and softer, set the second page in front of him. Diagnosis: shared selective mutism, presumed psychogenic, onset prelingual. The children do not speak. None of them. To anyone. He drove south himself. He did not bring Misol. He did not bring Do-yoon. He brought in the inner pocket of his coat the plum blossom handkerchief and the ultrasound photograph, and a question he had not yet learned how to phrase. The bookstore in the coastal town had a wooden sign that read, "P.O.'s Books and Other Slow Things." The bell above the door was a small brass fish. When he walked in, the fish rang, and 3 children looked up from a low table near the window, where they were folding paper boats out of yesterday's newspaper. The girls were on either side of the boy. The boy held the chalk. They did not run to him. They did not run from him. They looked at him the way deer look at a hunter who has not yet decided what he is. Hyren came down the back stairs with a cup of barley tea in her hand and stopped on the 3rd step from the bottom. She did not drop the cup. She had practiced not dropping things for 3 years. She set it carefully on the banister. "You are not allowed in this room," she said. Quiet. Even. The way a teacher speaks to a student who has wandered into the wrong building. Heirin, you don't get to say my name in front of them. The boy at the table, Teo, though Jinwoo did not know that yet, wrote something on the chalkboard and turned it toward his mother. Heirin's eyes flicked down, then up. Her face did not move. Whatever the boy had written, she had agreed to it, somewhere between the third stair and the floor. 5 minutes, she said to Jinwoo. On the porch. Not in here. Not near them. On the porch, the sea was the color of old coins. Jinwoo took the handkerchief out of his pocket and laid it on the railing, plum blossom up, exactly the way she had laid it on the wet step 3 years ago. It was a small gesture. He had rehearsed it in the car for 200 kilometers. He saw, by the way her jaw tightened, that she recognized the rehearsal and was unmoved by it. I read your note, he said. It wasn't a note. It was a receipt. They don't speak. No. Because of me. She did not answer that. She did not need to. The waves did it for her, slow and indifferent, breaking on rocks that had been there before either of them had a name. I want to... No, she said. Whatever sentence ends that verb, no. You don't get to want in their direction. You picked under a roof, in the rain, with a cigarette in your hand. You picked a woman who almost died, and a boy who needed a father in the room. I was the one who had to be fine. Remember? I have the name. I have the house. I have the doctors. She turned to look at him, and for the first time he saw what 3 years of being precise had done to her face. It had made her beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with him. I gave the name back. I left the house. I fired the doctors. And they still don't speak Jinwoo. So whatever you came here to fix, it's older than you think, and it's not yours to fix. Inside the bookstore, the brass fish rang. A small fisherman with a white mustache had come in to buy a paperback about a detective in Busan. The triplets, without looking up, slid a folded paper boat across the table toward him. He took it gravely, bowed to them gravely, and left with the boat in his coat pocket like a permit. Jinwoo watched through the window. His throat did something it had not done in years. I have a son, he said quietly. In Seoul. I know. He is 7. He sleeps with the hallway light on. I know that too. Misol, I don't want to hear that name on this porch. Her voice was still even, but it had iron in it now. Not because I hate her. I don't anymore. I'm too tired. But because they... She nodded toward the window, where 3 small heads were bent over paper. Have never heard it, and they are not going to hear it from you. He nodded. He understood, in the slow way men like him understand things, that he had come south expecting a confrontation, and had been handed instead a boundary, which is harder, because you cannot win a boundary. You can only honor it. What do I do? He said. You leave. Heirin. You leave, she said again, and you write a letter. Not to me. To them. 1 letter. You tell them in plain words what you did and why. Not what you felt. What you did. Children can survive what their parents did. They cannot survive what their parents pretended. He stood on the porch for a long time after she went back inside. The handkerchief stayed on the railing. He did not pick it up. He understood that it had never really been his to take back. He drove home that night. He wrote the letter in a hotel room in Gangneung, with the curtains open to the dark sea. It took him 11 hours and 4 drafts and 1 phone call to Director Ma, asking her to mail it, because he understood he could not be trusted to deliver it himself without making it about him again. The letter said, in part, I was given a choice on a Tuesday in October, and I made it badly. I was told there were 3 of you, and I said not now. I am sorry that those were the first words you ever heard in your mother's body. I am sorry they were the last ones you needed to hear. You do not owe me your voices. You do not owe me anything. Your mother was the one who stayed in the room. She is the only parent you have ever needed, and she is enough. If you ever want to know what I look like, there is a photograph at the back of this envelope. If you do not, please give the photograph to the sea. Halmeoni Pio brought the letter upstairs on a Thursday morning. Hiren read it first, alone, at the kitchen table, with a cup of barley tea going cold beside her. She read it twice. Then she called the children up the stairs. She did not read it to them. She set it on the table and said in the voice she used for hard truths, "This is from the man whose name is not on your school papers. He says he is sorry. You can read it now or later or never. You can keep it or throw it away or give it to the sea. Whatever you choose, I will help you do it." The girls, Ha-Yun and Si-Yul, leaned over the page together, their foreheads almost touching, and read in the slow, careful way of children who have learned to read mostly in silence. Teo did not lean. He climbed into his mother's lap, which he had not done since he was 4, and pressed his ear against her collarbone, the way he used to listen, perhaps, before he had been born, when there had only ever been her heartbeat, and 2 others like his own. When the girls finished, Si-Yul picked up the chalkboard and the yellow chalk. She wrote one word and turned it toward her mother. "See." Ha-Yun nodded. Teo nodded against his mother's chest. So they walked, the 4 of them, down the gravel path past the harbor, past the dried squid hanging on lines like small flags, past the fisherman with the white mustache who tipped his cap without asking, to the rocks where the waves came in slow. Hiren held the photograph. The children held the letter, one corner each, the boy in the middle. They did not throw it. They folded it, carefully in the same crisp folds they used for their paper boats, the girls turning it under Tayo's small, serious hands, until the letter and the photograph inside it became a single white boat with a sharp prow. Tayo set the boat on the water. The sea took it the way the sea takes everything, without comment, without permission, with a patience that has nothing to do with forgiveness. The boat rode one wave, then another, then turned its prow toward the open horizon, and was, after a little while, only a white speck, then a memory of a white speck, then nothing. Teo watched it go. Then he opened his mouth, for the first time in 3 years, and said one word, very quietly, into the salt wind. "Iyama." Mother. Hiren did not move. She had practiced not moving. But her hand, the one not holding her son's, found her pocket, and inside the pocket was the plum blossom handkerchief, white silk, red thread, the same one she had laid on a wet step in Pyeongchang 3 years, and a lifetime ago. She had carried it every day, not because she had forgiven anyone, but because she had wanted to remember the exact weight of what she had walked away from. She took it out now. She looked at it once. Then she let it fall, plum blossom up, into the water, where it floated for a moment beside the slow ripples left by a paper boat. And then, quietly, the way old things go, it sank. The girls reached for her hands. Teo said the word again, a little louder. "Ioma." And then, because triplets share more than wombs, Ha-Yun said it. Then Si-Yul. 3 small voices, none of them practiced, none of them perfect, all of them arriving at the same shore at the same time, into a wind that smelled of diesel and salt, and the dried squid of a town that had folded itself around them without ever asking why they were quiet. Hiren knelt on the rocks. She gathered all 3 of them into her coat. She did not say anything back. She had said enough 3 years ago on a wet step, with a handkerchief between her and a man under a portico. This time, she only listened. And somewhere on the open water, a paper boat with a letter inside it crossed a current and was carried slowly toward a horizon that did not belong to anyone. Not to a man in a glass tower, not to a woman in a glass house, not to a boy who slept with the hallway light on, but only to the sea, which had been there before any of them had a name, and which would be there, patient and indifferent and kind, in the way only old things are kind, long after every name had been forgotten, except the one 3 children had finally chosen to say out loud. Iyama. The word the sea had been waiting for.